Yes, it's done.
So we are live now, so we'll maintain some silence for 2 minutes so that the audience gets time to join in. Vijay, you have to make some announcements.
Yeah. Waiting. It's just increasing.
Yeah.
Cross 15.
Sunil BL is not queuing. Sunil BL.
ಸುನಿಲ್ BL ಏನು
ನನಗೆ ಅಲೋ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಹೇಳಿ
ಸರ್. ಅಲೋ ಸುನಿಲ್ BL.
ಅಲ್ಲಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ಇದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಅದು ಅವರು ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಆಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಅವ್ರು ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ನನ್ನ ಲಿಂಕ್ ಕಳಿಸಿಲ್ಲ, ಅದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು. ಅವರು ಲಿಂಕ್ ಕಳಿಸಿ ಅದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಎಂಟರ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು. ಈಗ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಅವ್ರು ಈಗ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಈಗ we have allowed it now.
Okay.
He can join in now. ಆ PDF ನ ಫಾರ್ವರ್ಡ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಸುನಿಲ್ಗೆ. Cross 35, 38. A message for all the participants. We are waiting for some time. You can see people are still logging in. All the panelists are ready to go actually, but we are waiting for people to log in. I can see about 40-45 already here. Slowly people are still logging in. Welcome to Dr. Percy Chawda. Welcome, sir.
Hi.
Ganeshan sir, we need to make change name on what is appearing.
Okay. Will I come in right in the beginning, in the middle? I'd like to go as soon as possible. I've had an exhausting day. Hi, Prasad.
So you want to address this question in the beginning and then we go?
Yeah. I'll just do 5 minutes and then I'm exhausted. The amount of shit I've been through today is not easy. So let me just finish off with it and then go.
Sir, we are live, sir.
Whoops. Sorry, Ravish.
That's Dr. Percy Chawda, is a psychiatrist from Mumbai. I won't say more than that now.
Kersi is a multi-faceted personality.
Prasad was the person who first got me into the IPS task force. So he has a special position in my heart.
Yes.
We're almost reaching 50. We're almost reaching 50 now. This is a message for all the participants. We are waiting for people to join in. We almost reached now 50. I think it's time we can start. I think. Okay. I just give ground rules. Good evening to all the participants, panelists, and everyone. So welcome to this unique webinar related to suicidal intervention, and this is actually very important on the background of recent events, as you may understand. Myself, I'm Dr. Vijay Habishatra, and I'm one of the psychiatrists in Bangalore and a coordinator for this Telearogya webinar series. Along with me is Dr. Mahesh, who is also co-coordinator, and Dr. Jagdish, of course, who will also join in at some point. And today's panel, we have a couple of panelists and one guest with us and a chairperson. So all the people will be introduced to you by Dr. Mahesh in a minute. I'll just give you ground rules. If you see at the bottom of your screen, there are two boxes there, or icons. One is Q&A section, and another thing is chat thing, where in the chat box you are able to send any message for question. You need to put your question, type your question, and next to the question, put your name, put where you're working or where you're based, and the questions only from Q&A section will be taken up for discussion. And Dr. Mahesh will be the voice. He will be the voice of your questions. Unfortunately, this sort of webinar will not allow you to, come on audio or video and ask questions directly. But in the form of questions by typing, you can ask n number of questions. We'll try as much as possible to take all your questions. Your participation is the most important of all, and we want you to, have an enjoyable learning. A good evening today. So with this small introduction and background of our webinar, I'll hand it over to Dr. Mahesh to take over. Over to Dr. Mahesh.
Thank you, Dr. Vijay. I was actually waiting for Dr. Jagdish to join in because he was supposed to do the introductory remarks. Anyway, I think he will talk when he's joined us. I would like to welcome our chairperson, Dr. Prasad Rao, the president of Indian Association of Private Psychiatry. Welcome to you, sir.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Prasad has various associations to his, official positions. He's actually worked at IPS as a past president and in the Geriatric Society, and also currently he's the president-elect for Association of Psychiatric Associations, right?
Asian Federation of Psychiatry.
Asian Federation for Asian Federation for Psychiatric Association. Welcome to you, sir.
Thank you very much.
I would also like to introduce our special guest and panelist today. We have Dr. Priya Iyer. Good evening, madam.
Hello. Hello. Good evening.
We have a very wonderful combination, Dr. Priya Iyer here today. She is a medical graduate. She's graduated from KMC Hubli and JNMC Belgaum with a change there. And madam went on to do her law. Right now, she's the first barrister to enroll to the Karnataka State Bar Council. She's actually practiced law in Bangalore. She would actually be a forensic freelance expert and medical legal consultant for various hospitals and corporate companies like Airtel, Vodafone. And to name a few like that. She's actually done a lot of work and specializes in medical legal issues, forensic criminology, security consultation, and internal theft investigations. Dr. Iyer has also earned reputation as a scientific counsel in legal, corporate, insurance, and personal matters. She's also the member of the International Bar Association and Karnataka State Bar Association. She's always been active in the community through participation in the crime preventive measures and with the Indian police. Her presentation arguments covers the latest high technology issues in forensics and medicine to assist the legal professionals, attorneys, corporate, doctors, individuals, ensuring positive results in every aspect of legal solution to the clients. Welcome to you, madam. I would like to invite and thank Dr. Ravish for actually having joined us today. Dr. Ravish, welcome to you. Dr. Ravish is well known and he's a professor and HOD of Department of Psychiatry at Mysore Medical College. He has plenty of degrees to name, but among the important ones other than his medical degrees are his Bachelor in Law, Master in Law, and also doing his PhD in mental health law, human rights and policy. He's also the IPS National Legal Committee Chairperson. Welcome, Dr. Ravish.
Thank you.
I would also like to welcome Dr. Karsi Chavda, our special panelist for today. Welcome to you, sir.
Thank you.
Dr. Karsi has been practicing psychiatrist at Mumbai. He's actually had notable contribution in IPS when he actually headed the committee for the special committee, LGBT community. Sorry, sir, I missed it. LGBT committee, and his noteworthy contribution and to make sure the voice of LGBT community was heard is what he did in the last 1 year. And he's been very active on all the forums, social media, be it college, be it general public, and be it psychiatric forums. He's one of the esteemed speakers in most plenary sessions. Welcome to you, sir.
Thank you.
Dr. Jagdish actually has not joined in, so I think we should straight away go to the beginning. So Dr. Vijay has given a background of how we are going to take it forward. So we have already received some questions on the issue. So firstly, I would like to take a question. Dr. Ravish, this is for you. Coming to facts and figures on suicide, what do you think? Is there any growing trend that's happening in India? and some thoughts on what's happening in the Indian scenario.
Yeah, good evening, all of you. Definitely, the rate of suicide has been increasing. Maybe the awareness, the multiple disciplinary approaches, and media. So, all contribute to the increased number of reporting. Not only that, when I was postgraduate, okay, suicides among children, that is below 12 years, was something unheard of. So we are now seeing suicides below 12 years, below 10 years as well. So if we take an epidemiological trend, definitely there is an increase, and some report as high as from 60 to 70%, okay, compared to what was happening around 2000 millennium. So overall, definitely from all the cities, major cities who are now competing, who will be the suicide capital. For a long time, Bangalore was suicide capital. When there was a surge of Silicon Valley, following the first recession, it came down. And then I'm just trying to correlate with some of the developments. May not be so true from the psychological point of view. Now, Indore is supposed to be reporting more suicide. So, considering state-wise, Kerala, West Bengal, where the literacy rate is quite high, there has been a lot of report of suicide. So, overall, suicide has become one of the leading top 10, within the top 10 causes of death in India.
Thank you, Dr. Ravish. The next one would be to Dr. Priya Iyer. We've been getting all this sort of facts and figures from NCRB data. So when do you think actually it gets reported as suicide, and who's actually reporting this sort of suicides and for this data, ma'am?
This is a very interesting question, because most of the time the suicides are reported by the police. So the police files an affidavit before the court stating the basic statistics, because the police will have records of all types of crimes that happens in this in the particular area, and that would be stored in the state police report, and that would be presented before the court. So the statistics will be handled by the police, because any medical legal issue or a death or a suicide which is unnatural death would be always reported. The first thing a person has to do is to report to the police. So it is for the police to decide whether it is a natural death or a unnatural death or a suicide.
How accurate are all these figures, ma'am? Because we don't know whether this is actual reporting in terms of facts or a lot of things.
Yes, it might not be exact facts, or the exact report is not available. But in fact, because majority of the places like villages and all that, when a suicide happens, because of the taboo attached to the suicide community, the families, so they do, most of the time they hide the facts to the police, and the cremation is done without reporting.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. The next one is on the recent development of the Mental Health Care Act 2017 decriminalizing suicide. So I'm just going with this sort of statement here. Suicide decriminalization is better than prosecution. So I want the medical position from Dr. Ravish and the legal position from Dr. Iyer.
See, various courts.
I think Dr. Ravish will say first.
Yeah, thank you. See, there has been various arguments with regard to the legality issues, but from the medical point of view, we should consider that suicide happens because of some kind of stressor. In fact, the Mental Health Care Act of 2017 after long discussion, we all know how much time and how many amendments it took. So from a medical perspective, suicide does happen because of some kind of a stressor. See, everyone, okay, thinks about how we can lead a peaceful and a happy life. So if someone has to uh, take own life, they will be ambivalent. Definitely, they will have a fear. So first of all, someone suffering from a undisclosable pain or non-availability of alternative way. So already one who has gone through hardship of life is now attempted and then has been rescued. Definitely punishing him will be some kind of a double effect. So in one of the High Court judgments, definitely the judges felt that these are the people who shouldn't be in the prison. They should be seeking some kind of medical help. I mean, when I say medical help, it includes psychological and rehabilitative help. So it was some kind of a draconian kind of a law, which was part of the colonial rule of British Indian legal proceedings. So decriminalizing was taken up quite early itself, but during the 1977 emergency, the legal commission recommendation was somehow dropped, and it nearly took 30 long years, 30 or 40, in fact, 2017. So 40 long years to be successful in decriminalizing the suicidal survivors. So medically, even if someone is going to be on the deathbed, the role of the medical fraternity is to give a dignified death. The attempt of the medical fraternity is to revive. So from the medical perspective, we shouldn't be causing one more pain by criminalizing the effect. What people say, as I am a medical legal expert, self-killing should not be equated to killing of someone else. It is not equal to a murder. So definitely they need more psychosocial interventions rather than putting them into a label of criminal. I mean, that's what my introductory message to this panel.
Dr. Iyer, we want to hear from you.
Yeah. Now that the basic thing what you are asking is, how is it when we decriminalize this particular issue, how it happened? See, although our laws are from the British, taken from the British themselves, in the year 1963, they decriminalized suicide. Whereas in India, it is only 2017. So we are still very backward. And here we have to look this decriminalization in various situations, because circumstances and situations and facts of the cases changes in every case. So when we look at it, decriminalization in case of suicide due to there is an attempt to commit suicide. For example, revolutionists, people like Anna Hazare or the Iron Lady of Manipur, Sharmila. So these people also tried to, commit suicide, or where they threaten, they put their life into stake for the sake of a particular cause for the society. So at that particular time, when the medical fraternity feels that this particular person is, he might be fasting for 10 days, 11 days, 15 days, whatever. The moment they find that his health is deteriorating, they immediately send the police, and the police forcibly stops that person. So now you have to dissect this decriminalization in various aspects of attempt to commit suicide or attempt to die. So we have to, it's a very broad, it's a very debatable and a broad perspective, wherein Article 21 has to be taken into consideration, wherein our Indian Constitution tells that we have right to live, right to life. Then why there is no right to die? So there you have to answer that particular question. Then again, when it comes to the International Convention on Human Rights, wherein the Article 3 of International Human Rights Convention tells that you have to prevent suicide because it is also violation of human rights. Because a person, a human, is in a state of mind wherein he feels that he's lost everything and there is nothing more than that. So he feels the end of the road. So when he feels the end of the road, that is also a violation of human rights, and it is the duty of the state to take care of the person from not committing suicide. Now, before 2017, India, the police used to arrest these people who attempt suicide and not succeeded in committing suicide. So they become victimized, and then they have to spend some time in the jail. Usually it is 1 year or 6 months to 1 year, or with fine, or with both. So many a times the court has been considerate in the recent years, but previously it was not so. Let us take a few decades ago, it was not so. The punishment was severe. But now that people look at it in a more humanitarian outlook, so they say that no, he needs support. So now the court is assuming that yes, a person who is attempting suicide is definitely, he has some psychological problem. But again, here again one more crux, a perplexed state comes, wherein some people will attempt, but they themselves know that it is not going to cause serious consequences of ending life. So such people are also there, where they are constantly trying to attempt, and there is a duty imposed on the medical personnel, there is a duty imposed on the psychiatrist, there is a duty imposed on the state now from 2017, but which was not so before 2017 amendment. Any
Thank you, ma'am.
clarification?
Dr. Ravish had a clarification, is what I thought.
No. Actually, this is what we need to ask psychiatrists. When we say decriminalization, we are trying to destigmatize as well. See, the terminology what needs to be used is not successfully did the suicide. It is actually completed suicide and an attempt. See, suicide itself is
we have to look at it from two things.
Yeah, suicide itself is a very debatable and a very complex question with a multiple outlook. And the ethical dilemmas start when the duty, is looked from different societal perspective. That's why many want to term it as suicide is not purely a medical disorder, it's more of a social disorder. So I keep often telling all suicides doesn't have mental illness, and all mental illness doesn't commit suicide. This is something we want to destigmatize as well.
Thank you, Dr. Ravish.
And another thing is, definitely the suicidal reporting far different from the ground realities. And what is my experience working in the government setup is, it would be investigated by the police, but very rarely it would be taken to the court of law, where there would be some kind of a B reporting and some kind of compromise, and then the judge also would be looking from a very humanitarian perspective and then would try to close the issue.
Thank you, Dr. Vish. I would like to welcome Dr. Jagdish, who's just joined in. I want Sir to say a few words on the background of this program that we planned and on the current controversy, sir.
Thanks, Mahesh. My connectivity was quite poor. I could not join you. See, there are two issues. One is about, as just now Dr. Ravish said, all mentally ill will not commit suicide. All people who commit suicide are not mentally ill. What is important here is, now today we are seeing when people commit suicide, they will be looking for who has abetted the person to commit suicide. So for a person to be abetment, we have to see the personality of a person before they conclude that just because of a issue, the person has completed suicide. Now, coming to the issue, today we have a lot of things related to suicide. One, if a celebrity disappears from the world scene, a lot of journalists are keen on knowing who was the specialist who is to treat them. So many a times wrongly reported or half truth is reported, stating that a psychiatrist was treating, this is what he said, and the doctor will be put into difficulties. So I guess we need to draw a line how to report on suicide. And today we see one of our well-known psychiatrists across the country was put into trouble by reporting half-truth. So in that context, what we are having discussion is absolutely relevant today, and that too on Telearogya, which is a free app for everyone, for the doctor and a psychiatrist, to the treating doctors, because this is the only platform where we don't charge anything and only the confidentiality and all the laws are maintained. Madam, we want to know one thing from you. One thing from you is,
yes,
how much of the personality of a person is taken into account before accusing someone of abetment of suicide? Because everyone who breaks a relationship will not end with ending their life, or people having multiple difficulties getting a notice of termination of job should not end life. But that cannot be attributed for abetment. This is a double-edged sword. That's why I want some clarity.
Yes. Now, since you are talking about, since it is a double-edged sword, this particular section itself is wherein abetment. Now, even let us take an example of the recent suicide itself of actor Sushant Singh, wherein the police, the moment the suicide comes, there was no suicide note over there, and they were able to, while investigating, they felt that these are the people who would have, they named a few. And in fact, the media should also take a note of these things, because all are celebrities over there. So the names were dropped, and the police has also given a note on that, that these people might have been the cause for it. But before we get into that, in the court of law, it becomes the bonded duty of the person who is accused in this particular case to prove that nothing has happened because of him. The action what he performs, that is the accused, his action should be directly proportionate to the end result of the victim. Means it should be very clear-cut picture that because of this person's action, the victim has committed suicide with no other options left over. This is what we should be able to prove.
Yes, there should be a temporal relation, number one.
Yes.
Second thing is, as per the IPC section 40, it should amount to the offense itself.
Yes.
The abetment section will subsequently come in. So
because accusing a person is different, and proving that accused person that he is the reason for this particular action is different. So in the court of law, the circumstantial evidence, the contributory evidence, the documentary evidence, then the forensic evidence, everything comes into play there.
Okay. Thank you, madam. May I request our own colleague, Dr. Karsi Chawda, who's there with us, to talk on reflections of how actually a psychiatrist should be dealing with these sort of issues when it comes to a celebrity losing life and the media and dealing with these sort of issues. Dr. Karsi, can I have your reflections on this, sir?
Okay, thank you. Yes, you can. Some of you who are on the groups have heard what I have posted. Some of you who are not on my groups may not have some awareness on what is happening. I'm going to speak a little specifically related to what has happened because it has not been a very good experience for me. And it has not been a very good experience for the simple reason that I had not made a statement. And in spite of the fact that I had not made a statement, the media said a whole bunch of things about what I was reputed to have said. It might have been okay for the media to have said it. It might have been okay for people who don't know they read about it, the general public. It certainly wasn't okay when in some of the posts, some of my colleagues took it for granted that the doctor would have said whatever he had to say and would have betrayed a confidence. Please let us go with the idea that we have to support our colleagues. We are not nitwits. We are not idiotic. We do not go about talking badly about other people. Please do not talk badly about us as well. I am so incredibly happy that the person, the DCP of the zone in which this whole thing fell, who called me that day when that incident happened, and I spoke to him for all of 2 minutes in the morning, where all I said was, because he found my prescription over there, I said, yes, it was me. No, I do not think that I can talk too much on the phone. That is all that I said. He asked me whether I felt that there was some wrongdoing. I said, I do not think so, but I have not been in contact since some time, etc., etc. And yet the media, which has been hounding me, has talked so much about everything that I am supposed to have said, the diagnosis that I am supposed to have given, personal talk about the person's girlfriends and to-be wife, which I have absolutely no awareness of, with great impunity. I have been hounded by the media, and I am extremely upset at times that some of our colleagues have gone around saying, oh, he shouldn't have opened his mouth. Like I said before, we are not nitwits. And I'm so incredibly glad that today, finally, when I couldn't take it anymore, I took legal advice and I asked the DCP how it had been leaked out and what nonsense had been said. And he told me that I have made a media report when the media had been asking me about what the doctor's diagnosis was. I had said that the doctor has not been even called and he has said nothing. And he was kind enough to send me, the snapshot of what he had told the news media, which unfortunately the news media, of course, had not reported. Finally, the police came out with a statement saying the doctor has not been called. My only point in all of this is we, at a particular level, probably become famous because celebrities come to us. And I think it's even more important for us to have a situation where we learn how to keep our mouths shut. We do not say anything more than the absolute basic minimum. The least we would expect is for our colleagues not to conjecture that, I've been trolled by saying you have sold your soul for some money. Go to hell. Who the hell do you think you are? There is a limit to the amount of nonsense I will take. I will also say something else. The IPS has stood by me. They have stood forefront. All the top people have called me separately and have told me that individually and collectively, the IPS would be willing to do anything that I might want to come out in support of me, because they at least had the basic trust, shall we say, that I would not open my mouth like a little nitwit who has never spoken to a celebrity before. I am so thrilled that people who matter to me, whether in the Bombay Psychiatric Society or in the Indian Psychiatric Society, or patients who are celebrities and who have come out in the open supporting me, or my doctor friends or youngsters who have never spoken to me before, have found my number from somewhere and have come out in support. I'm equally happy that the hospitals to which I have been affiliated, their marketing department has just come out with a statement saying Dr. Chowda is not talking to the public. And that's the way we have to be. We have to go around saying we are not going to be talking to the public. We have to not give any details. That is what you have to do. And if the police asks you, answer as little as possible. That would be the dictum. You have to, of course, say that you do not think that there is a attempt to murder, if that is what you feel, because I mean that is, I think, what you should say. But you have to say, I have no idea as to whether that is so. In my remarks with him, it did not seem like that. So you are talking about what you feel, and I think that is the way to go about it. Give as little information as possible. And for God's sake, may I request all of you, do not believe the media. There's a question even in this box over here, which can be misconstrued by me as this doctor is giving out the names and the diagnosis and the treatment and private information related to the celebrity. Please do believe that some of us are ethical and that we are not going to open our mouths.
Thank you so much, sir. May I request Dr. Prasad Rao, President of IAPP, to say, as an organization and a role, do you want to have any guidelines for doctors and psychiatrists who are practicing to give and interact with the media? Should there be any guidelines for us to actually keep in mind and follow for reporting to media? Dr. Prasad, you have to unmute yourself, sir. Dr. Prasad, can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Am I audible? Hello?
Okay, Mahesh, meanwhile, I'll try to answer this.
I was just trying to get Dr. Prasad online. If you could answer on the role of IAPP as an organization. No, Dr. Prasad, I think he's okay. Dr. Ravish, on guidelines for media to report suicide and how, as a doctor, we should be bound by some guidelines.
Yeah, because during my presidentship as Indian Psychiatrist Society Karnataka chapter, there was a IAS officer which made a huge turbulence, whether it has to be given for COD or CBI. Okay, it was debated at the national level. During that period, as a president, I had taken two decisions. One thing is to come up with media guidelines, and second thing is to insist on psychological autopsy, just like how forensic medicine do the autopsy before terming something as suicidal, because there were a lot of vested interests in that particular case. So what I suggest for psychiatrists is they are not obligatory to answer the media. And Dr. Kersey was very specific in telling whether it is media or to the police, you got to be as minimum deploying as possible. And it's not obligatory until unless the police officer is an investigating officer that you need to support and cooperate for the investigation. And moreover, if it is highly confidential, you can always say that you will present those facts in the court of law. So let us not get ourselves into some kind of a heroic situation and then try to overwork ourselves and then try to help public by giving more information. No, it's not at all obligatory to answer the media.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ravish, for this comments on the responsibility of a psychiatrist and the guidelines that we need to follow. I thought I'll just check with Dr. Prasad. Can Dr. Prasad answer this professional point of view, professional organization? Dr. Prasad? No, I think I'm not able to get him online. So I thought I'll just go into the next issue about suicide-related issues. With this act of a celebrity, committing suicide, serve as a role model for people who are depressed and other youngsters who for reason believe that their life is very much connected to them and may actually contemplate dying. There's actually an incident of a copycat suicide that's actually happened. So what steps should we take in terms of safeguarding our society whenever these sort of issues happen? Media has definitely a lot of role, but media portrays suicide in a big way, and a lot of youngsters and young minds can get carried away, and people can contemplate suicide. Dr. Iyer, your responses to this sort of steps that to be taken to safeguard the society and the role of media here.
Yeah. See, talking to media itself, whether it's you, me, or anyone else, is a very, scary thing. It's better to not have publicity than to talk in front of them, and they they misinterpret, mislead the society, basically. So they should definitely have certain restrictions which has to be framed. There should be a law, there should be a framing of contents, what content has to be put, and they should not sensationalize anybody's suicide and the way the suicide is committed. So the major details about a suicide should not be published on the media, and the media should not make it as a big panel discussion on someone's death, basically. So basically, I would also tell, even in this particular panel, we will not stick on with any particular person's suicide. It is basically to make people understand that when someone is feeling left out, it is the duty of every human to be with that person. To a few loving words also makes lots of difference. That's how the society should respond to the people who really, because the society is in such a stress right now because of the policies that we are going through, the COVID-19 situation. And it's not only celebrities, even family people. And you have to know very important thing in suicide is, we have to look the suicidal things between husband and wife, compatibility problems, then dowry death problems. These also can lead to suicides. Under this, the law is very strict, because when a married women commit suicide, a separate Domestic Violence and Dowry Prohibition Act, 498A, so many acts come into play, along with 306 and 309. So one needs to be very careful when it is a suicide in a married woman. Now, every family member of a married woman is also liable, directly or indirectly, in abetment of that person. So the media reports various suicides in a various way. Especially the linguistic media people are more dramatic in presenting these before the society. What they do is they make the entire issue, whether it is between husband and wife, whether it is a boyfriend and a girlfriend, or whether it is a teenage love, or whether it is a video game like Blue Whale. So these are the things that affects the society, and the media should play a positive role. For example, the media should be able to tell a message to the parents that you have to have more observing capacity towards the kids, so that they don't do things which are which are towards committing suicide or doing some activities which will end their life. So the parents' duties. So rather than sensationalizing a particular story of suicide, they should tell what can lead to suicide, how you can help the society. So these what you call rehabilitative sort of information should go from the media. So the media plays a very important role. In fact, they are the watchdogs of democracy also. If our media is curbed also, it is going to give rise to problem. If we are left them free without any restriction also, it is going to lead to problems. So we have to tell them what type of message has to go. So they should not sensationalize. They should not try to make it a dramatic issue. They should be very responsible. They should not, when an advocate or a doctor gives the information or talks me, first of all, a doctor or a lawyer should never talk to a media person. It's simple. Whatever is to be spoken, if the police wants to speak, let them speak, because we are the people only before the eyes of law. So whether it is going to implicate somebody before the eyes of law or not. So a lawyer and a doctor's duty is to only present our information if the court asks us to do. And a prosecuting advocate will be different. A defense advocate will be preventing those people who have committed the crime. We will be trying to defend them. So basically, very professional people, I would suggest that it is better to be away from media, and like what Dr. Chada was telling, that yes, we have to keep our mouth shut before the media, because media misinterprets every action, every word what you speak. So professionalism is not taken into consideration. So our intention as advocates or doctors should be basically to help the society to lead a better life, to have a better society.
Thank you, ma'am. You actually raised a lot of issues, which is also one of the questions that's been asked also. So I thought I'll just check with one issue that you talked about. Starved to death. This happens during political strikes, and a lot of political leaders have done it in the past for getting pressure on the government to make some changes. So from a psychological point of view, Dr. Ravish could explain when should when should we intervene whenever somebody is trying to starve to death, and from a legal point of view, when should we intervene?
Yeah. See, there has been legal precedents with regard to these kind of fasting on to death or starving to death. The medical interventions has to be done when the person becomes critical. Okay, when there is a symptom significant enough that the person is not able to talk, walk, okay, or the vitals, okay. So definitely the court have already laid a proper rule that when there is a demarcation that the state has to intervene when the person becomes critical. So the state can override, okay, a person's own decision as far as this matter is concerned. And as a medical fraternity, it's our duty to help when someone is in a medical emergency, or to that matter, even in a psychological emergency.
Madam, your thoughts, ma'am. When should the legal point begin when somebody is trying to starve to death?
Yes. See, every human body is different. So every human body's response to a particular condition would be different. So for me, I might starve for 10 days also and still be very nice. A person who's a little weaker might only be able to starve 5 days. So his health state would deteriorate. So usually these people who protest and who for a particular cause, they put it in the media, they make it a proclaim that for this particular cause we are doing this. So if this is not met with, I'm going to fast until death. But does the state going to leave this? Is a very big question. So at that particular point, the police is made, the doctor has to check the patient, I mean the person who is basically doing a strike, food strike, what a hunger strike and all that, they will check, and if they find that they are medically deteriorating, immediately they'll force feed them. Like what that Sharmila, she's all the time with a Ryle's tube, isn't it? So what the force is forcibly, basically the state is forcibly telling her, no, you cannot die, even for a cause. So there, see, it's a very tricky thing, wherein at one place we say a right to life, but you cannot die. Right to die is not there. So this question arose so many times before the courts, in various courts in all over the world. That is why even in the Convention of Human Rights, under Article 3, they have made it a very mandatory thing that every country, everywhere, whether it is a custodial death happening or a custodial or a death inside a hospital, in a mental hospital itself. So what is the liability of a doctor, the employees, the nurses, the staff? All these also come into consideration there. Now, when a suicide they commit, when do you become liable under the Consumer Act? And now a question arises there. If a particular person commits a suicide, whether it is a revolutionist, whether it is a mental health patient, or whether it's anyone, what is the liability of the doctor there? Because I am very much particular about my doctor friends, basically, because most of the time it is the doctor friends who come to me whenever they are in when they are in the legal issues. So that is when we have to make the court understand, and the court also should have an ability to perceive this. Just Dr. Ravish or me or Dr. Chavda, anybody who's doing this particular program is also not enough. Basically speaking, the entire judicial academy in all the countries needs a massive study on this, wherein we need a particular jury system, wherein doctors are there and medical legal people like us are there, and to recommend, so that more than the judges, it would be the specialist juries who would recommend what type of punishment to be given, where they have to be stopped, and by chance a person who's fasting to death for a cause, where you should stop him, how liable he can be, he's taken by the police, arrested, all these are done. So what will a lawyer do? How will he take that particular person out of the situation? And then what are the duties of a doctor at that particular situation? So when is he going to tell that this person his health is deteriorating, he has to stop this? So where the state will come into existence. Now,
I'm also told about one thing, right to...
what do you call?
Ma'am, you also said about one important thing, right to life.
Right to...
So if you were to look at the controversy that arises out of right to life versus right to practice one's religion,
yes.
So where will you put the first thing, ma'am? Is it right to life or?
Now that is what I will. Now let me take one by one. See, when a person, when he's a revolutionist, he wants something, okay, out of the government. The state policy wants to be changed for a particular group of people. Then the law looks at it in a different manner. When it is a married woman dying, then the law looks at it in a different manner. When a person is fast unto death because of religious practices, for example, in Jainism, the Salekana, what they do, they fast until death. And lots of people do it, and we hear it. But what is the law doing? Are they reporting it to the police? Many a times then nobody reports that to the police, and the law doesn't come into existence, because the law is set into motion only when a particular person complains about it. And if you don't complain about it, then nobody has anything about it. No, your law has got nothing to do with it. So when a particular person is fasting until death for a religious cause, or when it is a teenage death, the law looks at it in a different manner. When it is a suicide done by a celebrity or a rich man or a man who's having extraordinary wealth and all this, they look at it in a different. Because, for example, even the death committed by Siddharth, Coffee Day owner, the law looked at it in a different manner, because when they start investigating, then they look, okay, there are loans, there are liabilities, therefore it pushed him to death. If he is a celebrity, who would have abated his death? If it is a teenager, who would have abated the teenager to die? And whether the person is a hypersensitive, hypochondriacal. So these are the things that we medical legal people and doctors need to show the court, because the court is also not having enough knowledge. This is the tragedy of our Indian judicial system. Very sad, very pathetic, and it's very painful for me to tell this, because many times when I myself have argued, this has happened, wherein the judiciary is not in a position to listen to that, appreciate that, and dissect the laws and the facts and the circumstances, and how a new because see, you need to have enthusiasm. You need to have what you call a proactive judicial person, a proactive person wherein you do new laws. We don't want to do that. We want to be still in the same shoes what the British were wearing. The British have gone very much ahead, but we are still with the same laws, same systems, and then we try to come out of that. So for every crime there is a solution also. There is a law which puts him in, there's a law which takes him out. So we, as in India, I think we doctors as well as medical legal experts can do wonders. And I'm there with your department, and I would definitely help for a cause. And these things has to be put forward to the judiciary in an appropriate manner, because only talking on panels and such discussions alone will not help. We have to stand together. We have to put this before the court, and also the court needs to have a intention to hear, to enthusiasm, to create new way of approach towards the problems. And the court should also think that we are not just basically watchdogs of democracy, but we are also here to make a better social living for the people. So the judiciary and the legal system has a greater responsibility than anyone else. So I feel we need to come together and recommend for a proper jury system in the courts, and doctors like Dr. Ravish and various other doctors can also come forward, and we are here. So let's see how we change this system. It won't take 1 or 2 days, but it will take decades.
Thank you, ma'am, for the reassurance and the support offered to us. I thought I'll just take the next question to Dr. Ravish. Would right to die be an ultimate triumph for autonomy? How would you respond to this, Dr. Ravish?
Yeah. See, anything absolute is not good for a democratic society. Yeah, that's the reason democracy gives power to everyone. So when we take up the 4 pillars of ethics, okay, autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and then justice, when you just think from the personal aspect, so autonomy, when it raises, the justice will come down. Because think about the suicide survivors. What about the family? Okay, see, for anybody, if the person who has completed the suicide is the sole bread earner, what will happen to the dependents? So, see, one has to look from many social obligations. So, not just overvalue the autonomy. Okay, in fact, we had discussed, myself and some of the European collaborators in British Journal of Psychiatry, about giving too much of weightage on the autonomy may not lead to a normal law and order within the society. Okay, it becomes very much self-driven society, which is definitely against the medical definition of health, because it's basically a balance between physical, psychological, social, and spiritual. So it's not just absence of some disease. So going by that, leaving the triumph for the autonomy could be very much detrimental. In fact, Mental Health Care Act, which was driven primarily on patient right based, okay, autonomy based, that also has given a section, exclusive section on suicide. That's section 115, where it has divided it to A and B. Okay, a clear-cut role of the state. So definitely we shouldn't accept the absolute autonomy phenomena.
Thank you, Dr. Ravesh. I thought I will just take a break and look into the question that's come in. There are around 40 questions that's already come in. So I would request the panel to be giving very brief answers so that we can finish this 40 questions and go on to the other questions that had come to us before the program started. So the first question from Dr. Srikala goes, are those deaths where it's due to abdominal pain and has resulted in suicide included in the NCRB statistics?
Three things we should understand, Mahesh. One is voluntary killing. Second thing is accidental killing. And third thing is abetted killing. When we are discussing about suicide, we should be very, very clear about these three aspects. So suicide amounts to only voluntary killing.
Okay, when you're talking about NCRB statistics, it's only voluntary suicide killing is what you're talking about.
Yeah, but there also, okay, when there is a death, okay, it can get seeped inside the numbers. So we can't totally believe the numbers.
Okay, there's also one question from Dr. Madhukar who says that suicide reported to the police is perhaps tenfold lesser, especially in developed states.
No, this is definitely we can't say that is tenfold or more than that, because reporting system is quite a huge difficulty in a very populous country like India. So
okay, there's also one
tenfold.
Okay, there's also one question from Dr. Madhukar itself. The suicide rate in Bhutan, the neighboring country, which has high happiness index, what do you think on the incidental rate?
The paradox is, if you take up, as I was mentioning in the initial remark, the secular nations tend to have higher suicidal rate compared to very religious kind of countries. But Bhutan is very much spiritually oriented country. When I say spiritually, not God-fearing, but nature connecting. So definitely, okay, Bhutan is in many ways, so they have their limited technological usage. So Bhutan is an exclusion. Okay, so we can't take them, for a populous country like India as a comparison.
Dr. Iyer, there's a question from Dr. Dayal asking about, after death of a person by suicide, can the police or the family of the person ask for case records or question the treating doctor? Are we bound by the confidentiality of the doctor-patient relationship here? What's your thoughts, ma'am?
Yeah. See, this particular question is a very important question. In fact, I was also trying to, because most of the time the hospital doesn't give the medical records of the patient to the relatives. They only give the discharge summary. So in some of the consumer related cases, when the hospital presents the entire records, that is when the manipulation also starts. So most of the records, medical records, are manipulated and it comes to the court. So I have found more than 100 hospitals doing this. So it's unfortunate. So I don't know. I was to fight that they should give the medical records at the time of the discharge or a patient's death. It is a moral duty.
Here also the question is about police asking for a copy of records. Are we bound by law to issue this records? Is the question here.
See, if the police ask for investigations, we need not give it. The police cannot force you to do anything. But if the police gets a order from the court for you to give the record, then you are bound to give. Otherwise, you are not bound to give.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Dr. Ravish, it's for you. Mental Health Care Act 2017 was oversold by Government of India, Parliament and media on section of decriminalization of suicide. Do you agree with the statement of overselling?
No, no, no.
Dr. Om Prakash wants to know.
Om Prakash is part of our legal committee as well. I can have private discussion, but still, for the benefit of the webinar participants, see, the whole issue of Mental Health Care Act, if it is implemented in the right way, okay, it is beneficial. It is definitely person-centered. I don't want to call them patient as well. See, let me tell you, as far as my knowledge goes, in spite of having post-graduation in law and doing my thesis on attempted suicide, there has been no punishment or liability that was determined by the court on IPC section 309. Please note this, okay? Whatever the high courts have been having different versions, but still the person who survived after an attempt was never punished. So there was a huge social concern about the double effect. So what the MHCA 2017 has come up has really helped in totally changing the scenario of mental health care service providing. However, the infrastructure, the budget allocation, okay, and whatever the review boards, because one thing when Dr. Iyer was mentioning, law is negative. That means you have to apply something, you have to move the court. But now there is something called as judicial proactivism. So the people can also file public interest litigations, number one. Second thing, there has been a lot of suo motu cases. Okay, so definitely the Mental Health Care Act has only decriminalized as far as IPC 309 is concerned, but it has retained IPC 306. Not only that, 108, okay, 109, and then 116. Okay, those with related to abatement, because still there has been lot of debate, even with the recent suicide of the celebrity, was there a abatement? So I feel MHCA 2017 has given enough, at least for a beginning, enough room for the scope to look between whether it was purely voluntary or there was some kind of an abatement. So I don't put the entire blame on the government or the media. But let me tell you, every citizen has got a responsibility. When Madam was mentioning about Coffee Day Siddharth, see, I have seen very disturbing pictures, video taken by common man. Okay, how the body was retrieved from the backwaters of Netravati, which was about to, confluence with the sea, and the body was half naked. And these kind of minute details, when a public, okay, a person from the public videographs in the Android phone and then starts sending it. So I think here what Dr. Priyadarshini mentions about more of proper judiciary hand in curtailing such acts need to be definitely taken on priority.
Thank you, Dr. Ravish. There's one question to Dr. Iyer here. Dr. Om Prakash wants to know how many people have been punished for attempting suicide before the Mental Health Care Act era. Any data that you can actually remember offhand?
I really don't remember. Let me be open about it. But yes, there were punishments. There are lots of cases wherein the punishment was from morning when the court started and the court ends. So that itself was taken as a punishment in some of the cases, where a very important case, I think Mr. Durga Prasad's important case law was there, wherein this person was punished, wherein he has 3 daughters to take care, and then he was not able to take care of them, and he attempted suicide and he got saved. So the court was very considerate in giving the punishment, but the punishment was only for the time he was spending in the court. So many times the court looks at it in a lenient manner, and they punish him very leniently, either with a fine or with 2 months or 1 month imprisonment and simple imprisonments like that. There are cases which have been there, reported, many are there. We can actually, if this detail is needed, I can get it, or anyone can type on the internet.
Has judiciary been proactive, or they're being lenient is what probably they want to know?
No, they are lenient, yes, definitely.
Okay. Dr.
Might
Madhukar,
be once upon a time. If you take 2-3 decades ago, they were a bit stricter, but now after since 2 decades, the court looks at it more leniently, and that's how the recommendation after 1983, the recommendations and amendments for the Mental Health Act, all this took place only during this particular time. So that means the court was also a very, they were having half-heartedly they used to punish. So it's
okay, there's also one question from Dr. Madhukar, who's talking about dealing with survivors of suicide, attempted suicide, which also include dealing with the family members along with the close friends. There's also a responsibility cast in the government on the background of the new law.
Lots of countries are there where they punish, yeah. See now, many governments, different countries look at it, abetment as a very different entity. And they look at the voluntary suicide, the suicide guy, I mean, the survivors are the worst hit, because he's not successful in committing suicide. One, he might repeat again. So what we have to see is basically, again, monitoring. So lack of effective monitoring, what we call it as. So whether the relatives of that particular person, if they're not monitoring him effectively, then the law punishes them in some of the countries like Australia, New Zealand, and all these countries. Whereas in India, I don't know, it's still not so, very seriously taken into consideration. But in some countries, it is taken very seriously. And let me give a brief history about why in different countries. Usually the Asian countries, African countries used to criminalize suicide. But now, luckily, India after 2017 decriminalized it. Now, the survivors of the suicide are the worst hit, because he's there to answer. So the taboo, then the feeling of guilt, then the feeling of, and then the side effects of what type of suicidal attempt he has done, whether it is an arterial cut, whether it's poisoning, whether it is hanging, because sometimes they become vegetative. Then they are in the relatives of the family have to take care of him. So we have to look at it from facts and circumstances of each case varies with the survivors. It might be a burns case, it might be a hang to death, a hanging, wherein he might again become vegetative, he might survive. So what next? Then a person who is taken poison, TIC-20, and all the pesticides, whatever you want to name it, they would have taken. So what are the side effects of them on their body? So what is it going? It is going to further burden the family. So these survivors, there is always a tendency for the survivors to recommit suicide. So you try until you succeed. So that would be their attitude basically. So it becomes the bonded duty of the society as well as the family to have an effective monitoring of such cases.
Dr. Ramesh, there's a question on psychological autopsy of suicides. Your thoughts on it? Dr. Shrikant wants to know your thoughts.
We from Indian Psychiatric Society Karnataka chapter, we pushed in this kind of psychological autopsy to be adopted, by the state government. In the case of, let me be now open, since it's more of a professional closed discussion. When the death of Sri D.K. Ravi happened, because initial suspicion was that it was a murder. Okay, and there were, I mean, I'm talking about how the media sensationalized the issue, and there was a whole debate. Okay, so we actually wrote a letter, but unfortunately, the investigation was sent to CBI. Okay, on the public pressure and the opposition party pressure. Then the autopsy was actually conducted by AIMS Delhi. In fact, I was in touch with them. Unfortunately, in India, we have not adopted the question about psychological autopsy, but we conducted a research when I was director of demands Dharwad, where we started helpline for farmer suicide. We conducted psychological autopsy of farmer suicide, and it's about to be published. So psychological autopsy from mental health professionals has happened, but we need to open the eyes of judiciary, as Dr. Priyadarshini was quite often insisting on this. This is something I think every psychiatrist, and I feel at the national level, IPS need to take it up. Because without a proper psychological autopsy, how can they term it as, either depression or as a result of mental illness, this suicide was completed. So,
Madam, there's Dr. Dayal who wants to know if a patient discloses that she or she wants to commit suicide, and patient tells that this is absolutely confidential, should you still be bound by duty of law to inform the family and police?
அவர் வந்து அவரோட ரிலேட்டிவ்ஸ்க்கு தான் இது பண்றாரு.
Mr. Ganeshan, your mic is active.
Or family, close family has to be told, because you're trying to help a person from not committing suicide. So it becomes a duty of the state also to protect somebody's life.
Thank you, ma'am. So there's
the
Dr.
debate
Nikki.
Before was, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, ma'am. Ma'am, you're saying something. You can complete.
Before the 2000, yeah, the 2000 before 2017, the debate was the state was actually against the complainant was the state, right?
Yeah.
Now, after 2017, the state also responsibility of the state to protect somebody's life.
Yes.
So you are supposed to, if he is telling suicidal tendency, so it becomes a duty of the doctor to tell his family and friends or relative, whoever is close at that time, who has come along with him, to tell for effective monitoring. Otherwise, there is a situation wherein the person commits suicide and then the family files a case on you on consumer.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now,
There's a question from...
it's a very deeper question.
Dr. Nikita wants to know, there's been recent suicides due to forced conversion to homosexuality, and is there any law that can take legal action against families and medical practitioners who still provide such services?
Yeah.
Dr. Ravish.
Yes, definitely. It is now the IPS has given a guideline, position statement, and definitely this is illegal. And let me tell you, psychiatrists are not just bounded by Mental Health Care Act. We are bounded by all the medical legal issues that other specialists are liable of. And one more thing I wanted to add with regard to the survivors. Section 115 B of Mental Health Care Act, the state has got the onus for the survivor to have the recovery and then rehabilitation. So there is a huge responsibility of the state. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why it is getting delayed. there is no enough budget, okay, to implement it quite effectively.
Okay, there's also a question from Dr. Madhukar who says, in media, celebrity suicide should be treated at par with any other suicide. And do we need this sort of instances to actually conduct such conferences and webinar? Should we not be proactive?
Absolutely. In fact, I strongly say the judiciary should take suo motu stand and ban media trial with regard to these kind of deaths. It's an urgent need, because media has forgotten the media ethics. They should always try to prevent such kind of deaths. Whenever they are giving such kind of information, they have to liaise with the health department. So, see, today one of our own colleague had to suffer, okay, for misdoing and construing all sorts of concocted message that was given to the public domain. So I feel the courts should take suo motu action and then ban media trial with regard to this, and it should not come up as a breaking news, and they should always provide alternatives or helplines, okay, or early warning signs so that they can approach, okay, they can approach for the suitable help.
There's also one comment from Dr. Pfizer who's saying conducting regular workshop can bring about changes in reporting style of the media with regard to suicide and attempted suicide. The neutrality in reporting has to be emphasized, and IPS and the other psychiatric societies could take this sort of initiatives for educating the media.
See, the IPS KC Karnataka chapter media guideline was published in both vernacular as well as English print media, but unfortunately the public memory is short-lived and they always want some kind of sensational news for their TRP. So we have to keep reminding them like a booster dose every now and then.
Correct. Thank you, Ravish. There's also one question from Dr. Panna Sharma and Dr. Om Prakash. This for Dr. Iyer. If someone intentionally writes somebody else's name in suicide note, and then how to proceed to prove the innocence? If a person is in financial crisis and also pressurized from those whom he took money to commit suicide, will there be a cause of abatement of suicide?
Now, see, what the abutment law says is, this particular person should have pushed him to that extent wherein if it is made out of anger or any anger or a word which is emotional, cannot be taken as a abetment. Whereas if it is told with a lot of that you are supposed to pay by this particular time, so it is for the prosecution to show that this particular person has pushed that person to an extent where he cannot face it anymore. That's how he committed suicide. So it comes under abetment, but facts and circumstances of the case should also help that case. So,
ma'am, how would you deal with this situation? Because ma'am, the next question is, how do you deal with the situation where there are 4 suicides reported after the media has shown this sort of celebrity death? Can the media be booked for abatement, or can there be a PIL, is what they want to know.
Yes, there can be, because I think this is the time very seriously we have to take it into consideration, and we have to stand together, especially the medical legal personnel and psychiatrists, wherein the psychiatric department has to say this is going to have a very bad psychological effect on the social system. Therefore, these messages should not be put on the media, and there should be some guidelines. This is the right time for it.
Ma'am, there's also one question by Dr. Panna Sharma saying, if you are asked to talk about a case and which pertains to suicide, as a doctor, to what extent we should be delivering the information, or how tight-lipped we should be when somebody asks on the media?
Tight-lipped, see, already the media knows it is a suicide. So what do you want to tell this media that how he died? We cannot dramatize like what media says. So we have to just say he has died, it is suicide, and you can tell whatever you want. We also know only so much. The rest is left up to us to tell it in the court or not to tell it. So it's left up to you.
See, I think, Mahesh.
No means no, that's all. The media cannot force you to tell something.
Absolutely. See, Mahesh, I think as doctors, we tend to overcorrect the society. Okay. We take it as an obligation on us that we need to do quite a lot to the society. See, the best thing is, okay, you have to zip lock your lips when it comes to media, not just tight-lipped.
Dr. Madhukar has a suggestion. Designated and well-trained IPS media advisors in every city should be there going forward.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, we can do that.
See, in fact, let me tell you some of the examples. After the celebrity death, I'm not naming, I'm just telling you, the district administration, Mysore district, okay, for the recent SSLC exams, okay, they wanted a helpline for the students. And since couple of days, I am running even while answering during this webinar, okay, I was answering some of the phone calls, to which I'll be following up. So let us take some of the positives as well. Number one. Second thing is, as a chairman of legal committee, now I'm going to insist the High Court of Karnataka and then to the Supreme Court that the media guidelines issued by Indian Psychiatric Society has to be strongly upheld by the judiciary. So if every psychiatrist with not just district headquarters, wherever they are practicing, they can take this, and then have a good, ultimately what matters is lobbying. See, the whole issue of Mental Health Care Act still not being properly implemented is lobbying. Okay, we have not lobbied enough with the member of parliaments. So let every psychiatrist be the foot soldier, the COVID warrior kind of foot soldier in preventing the suicide.
Okay, Dr. Ravish, there's also one question from Dr. Harisha. They are saying, don't you think public have got a privilege to know about the life of a celebrity? So media has a role to play, is what they're saying.
No. Definitely. See, that's what. There is something called a proprietary right. Okay, just how you own a mobile, likewise you own certain of your privileges. Okay, they don't want everything to be in the public domain.
There's also one question by Dr. Ritvik from Mumbai. He's asking if a psychiatrist is accused of abetment of suicide in a clinical case that he's treating, and the onus of the proof is lying with us. How do we deal with this and issues of medical negligence from there on?
So one thing the Mental Health Care Act mentions is whenever someone is very suicidal, okay, you need to bring it to the notice of mental health review boards. Okay, and then what kind of intervention one needs to do, because I was just going through the question and answer. So someone with suicidal behavior, okay, can ECT be given? If the patient is not willing also, can ECT be given? No, that can't happen. Okay, so, and the other thing is, what about the advanced directives? Okay, see, even advanced directives can be overruled by the mental health review boards. So definitely you have a binding to disclose it to the mental health review board, number one. Second thing is, whatever documentation you do, okay, so that medical record documentation will save you. So legal practice will also be more of a ethical practice as well, and it's a moral duty that you will have the satisfaction of giving the best standard care.
Dr. Iyer, there's a question to you. Dr. Deshpande wants to know, what would one say to the police in a similar case? If I know that there's been a marital dispute, then what is my duty in terms of a suicidal attempt or a suicide actually completing?
Marital what? I did not get the question.
Yeah, in a similar scenario, wherever a person has had a marital dispute and actually attempted or committed suicide, what is the duty towards police in inquiries?
Then yes, in case of whatever records you have, because the police would take your record and they would present it, especially when it comes to such a thing that would go against the accused, basically. And if it is attempted, it is what do you call, a different state. And if it is completed suicide, it is a different. Then he will be charged under 302 and all that.
Dr. Priyadarshini is also
murder, basically.
Yeah, Dr. Priyadarshini, there's also one question to you from Dr. Deepa. She wants to know, is there any law and provisions to teach suicide survivors that life is not ending the life? It's just not life for ending. So is there any law that actually helps them to deal with it, suicide survivors?
There is no law as such like that. The basic mental health act itself came into existence because we said when we have right to live, right to life, then we also have right to die, right? So there is no such law wherein we have made that you can end your life, because we look at suicide, assisted suicide, voluntary, like Dr. Ravish has told. There are, voluntarily committing suicide, abetting suicide, assisted suicide. So we have to look at suicide from so many, various, I think we can do PhD for 5 years doing this entire thing. All of us can discuss it. Will go on for years together on various topics, right to live. Deepa is my friend, basically. So she's put a question there because she always keeps telling this thing. So there is no law as such. Only the doctors can help such people.
Ma'am, there's also one question to you. This is from Dr. Anu from Gujarat. If a patient is admitted in a hospital which is working for mental illness, but in spite of all the necessary treatment and psychological inputs, round the clock nursing staff, but still the patient manages to commit suicide in the hospital, what would be the legal issues towards the institution and the treating doctor? This is a very common scenario.
Very interesting question. Very interesting question. This is what I was trying to bring the doctors there, where it is very difficult. See, as long as the psychiatric department also comes under the Boehme test of the medical laws. So you can Google what is the Boehme test, because I don't want to tell on that. But psychiatry department also comes under Boehme test for like any other specialist in the medical health system. Now, when a person wants to, you have to prove to the court that the standard of care, the basic standard, there are set of standard care for the medical system. So when you have followed that and yet you are blamed for it, then you come under the consumer, and where they go and file against you, that is where you have to show that your standard care was taken care towards the patient. So how will you prove it? Like Dr. Ravish already said, your proper medical records, then your CCTV footages, then your, the prescriptions, then how many employees. For example, let us assume there are 27 psychiatric patients in a ward, but you have 3 nurses there. Now 2 nurses goes away and there's only 1 nurse there. You are liable. I think I answered your question.
I thought you clapped for that, ma'am, actually, to make us liable. I heard it as a clap. Yes, Ravish.
Sorry, madam. You just finish. Dr. Priyadarshini.
Ravish, you go ahead.
No, Dr. Ravish was telling, yeah. Yes, you can tell that, then I will join you.
Okay. See, as Dr. Priyadashini was mentioning, see, for the given setup and for the given experience of the treating doctor, if you have done it in the best practice and the proper guidelines, there is a saying called accepted but not ideal. Okay, okay, fine. There is a line of flexibility, but that's not the ideal. Okay, so like for example, someone wants to defend themselves. In the sense of defending themselves, they would have killed somebody. Okay, it is accepted by the law, but that's not the ideal way. Are you understanding? So likewise, the medical profession, okay, is there to save the life. Okay, so this is a contradiction, but still, in spite of extending the best practice and the standard, whatever SOP, whatever you have, in spite of that, sometimes you would have told. I was a expert witness where there was a suicide within the hospital. This was in a special ward. Okay, so the husband had admitted the wife. So the husband immediately went outside to get the medicines. But the doctor had advised that, okay, not to leave the patient alone. So here, the liability will not be on the doctor, because doctor had properly advised that there should be a bystander 24 hours, eyeball to eyeball watchfulness. But the husband, okay, leaving the patient alone, went outside. So such kind of things do happen, but proper mitigation and proper intervention planning. So every organization, what I suggest is have a standard operating procedure, which doesn't conflict with the law of the land.
Thank you, Dr. Ravish. We have Dr. Prasad Rao back online. He was busy and held up with some commitments.
Not busy. Yeah. There was a kind of no. But as much as I heard, and in between I probably missed about 10 minutes. I really enjoyed the learning luminaries, especially Gitar, who talked to us on quite well on the legal side, and Ravish in his usual style, and Karsi. I think I really appreciate. I would probably, using my chairman's prerogative, I would say, remember Mahesh, we had 3 judges in our panel in the IAPP meeting, when the judges said that you present the evidence and the lawyers argue, and judge takes a learned opinion on that particular case. In the many cases which we discussed today, probably there is always a gray zone in which we tread far too often than white out black. So
Sir, at this point of time, I also wanted to know, as the president of IAPP and the role of professional organizations in a issue of this sort of suicide and the media reporting, what the sort of guidelines or support that you would want to offer for any practitioners, sir, actually?
Yeah. See, we have gone to the Press Council of India, and there is and asked them with a very specific question about a year back or so, when we asked them that, why should newspapers report suicide? To start with a very basic ethical issue and a lot of things. I think they said, sir, our part is reporting. The answer came very crisp. And if there's a news value, it is reported. You see day in and day out regularly in every newspaper and even in the media. So the best thing to do, probably from the professional point of view, is not to talk to anybody outside if you are involved as a case. Don't allow, because most lawyers tells me that you can actually kill the case by talking much before the court. I think the professional body and the professionals, along with lawyers, should always be available. And as a professional body, in the Supreme Court case, IAPP is actually working along with, we are actually supporting financially also by giving a lawyer. So I think it goes continuously, and the times are changing. I'm sure each one of us, you, me, and Mahesh, is involved with the law by helping the mentally health people, by going to PIL and talking to people. I think that's our continuous work. So professional body, we should
sir,
we are joined. I mean,
any thoughts on guidelines, sir? Guidelines from IAPP on media reporting on suicides. Do you want to come up with any guidelines?
No, we tried that. To start with, we tried with that. Tried with that. But I think I would keep you as a resource person and moderator. Let us form some guidelines before this 3 months or 4 months. Let us do really something. Yes, I am with you.
Dr. Ravish is hands-on, sir, and Dr. Priyadarshini Iyer also has offered any sort of support that you would need in terms of professional help.
Yeah.
So she's there with us to come up with any sort of guidelines for that, sir.
Can you send the emails to me, and I take her permission to send a mail to her to work with us?
Oh yes, sir. Most welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. There's around 10 more questions. I thought I'd quickly run through. We are really short of time.
I know.
There's one interesting question.
Our webinars are always interesting.
Yes.
And Ravish around there.
Yes. There's one question to Dr. Ravish here from Humaira Khan. She's a MPhil psychiatric social scholar. She wants to know how can we actually develop a model of psychological and sociological reasons, explanations to address issues of suicide.
This is opening a Pandora's box. I think, see, it's quite complex issue. Okay. There has been Western philosophy and then our own Asian philosophy. Okay, so it's very difficult to, as Dr. Prasad Rao was mentioning, to fill up these gray areas. So now we are in the modern era, okay, more of libertarian view. So as law is dynamic, okay, so is the life. Okay, there is huge change in socio-cultural perspectives. So we can't have a fixed model. Okay, see what Durkheim and other people gave the social explanations. Okay, when we go into the philosophical and the cultural, deep-rooted cultural beliefs, it's entirely different. So we can't have a fixed model. It's like a beehive. It's like a beehive. It goes on adding.
Ma'am, there's a question for you, ma'am. What is the liability of a treating psychiatrist if a person attempts or actually succeeds in committing suicide and the family sues you in consumer forum for this? Dr. Dayal wants to know this.
Yes. It's a good question. I am very happy. Now, the liability here is if a doctor, if you have done your part, that's what Dr. Ravish already told you this, that if your medical records, if your standard of care, if you passed your Bolen's test, and if you are able to prove that you have done an appropriate treatment to be done.
Standard of care? Is it
yes.
standard care?
Yeah. The standard of care, what would a psychiatrist do? Like what Dr. Ravi said, that an advice that he should be taken care, that you should have a proper monitoring, that is effective monitoring of that patient, and you have to be there all the time for that patient. So these are the things you would have given informations to you would have given instructions, informations regarding the case to the family of the patient. So they are supposed to abide as per that. In spite of that, if the patient commits a suicide, then you always in the court of law, because most of the doctors, they produce their expert opinions. So expert evidences can be provided by your other psychiatrist experts if you have practiced a proper ethical and standardized practice, which is accepted by the entire psychiatry department, then you are not liable under that. But anyway, what happens is, in spite of all these things are easier to be spoken, but you are still implicated, and then you have to go around the court. So if it is filed in the district court, it is for 4 to 5 years. Then it goes to the state consumer, another 5 years. Then it goes to national consumer, another 5 years. It goes to Supreme Court, another 4 years. So totally 20 years of life of a doctor goes in running around to the court. So to prove that you are not liable, if that person stops with it, either you win or he win, the next appeal stage goes on. So even for proving your innocence, this is the tragedy of our judicial system. So I feel that the judiciary, the moment a doctor files his expert opinion, and if the psychiatry department tells that he has practiced a standardized treatment, the moment the complaint comes itself, they can reject the application, such applications that will solve the problem and help doctors, which can be made, an effort can be made by the department, the entire, your IPP and whatever you are having. Your
There's
organization can do this.
Yeah, there's also one question to Dr. Ravish. You're running a helpline. So if somebody is expressing suicidal intent, what is the best and quickest method to get help to him? And you don't know the contact of relatives. How do you deal with it?
Okay. You just go on talking to them for a while. Okay, because most of the time, if there is a dreadful completion, it goes off. It comes like a like a panic attack. Okay, it's a ascending and a crescendo. So, lot of studies have shown once you come out of this period, there is some kind of a audio intervention.
There's some noise level. I think Dr. Prasad Rao's mic is on.
Yeah.
There's some background noise, sir, there actually from your mic.
Okay. So
yes, Ravish. Yes, Ravish.
What I was mentioning is, see, once you go on speaking to the person for a while, okay, because if you take that momentary time off, because most of the time, even the impulsive suicidal attempts, okay, everything has got a period of limitation. Okay, so it will just pass on, and allow the person, you be an active listener, and try to recollect, make them recollect the successful moments of their life. Okay, you should, unless you ensure the safety, don't keep the phone. Okay, and always try to instill hope. Okay, you can just give some kind of a task and ask them that you would like to wish to meet them personally. So leave with some kind of a task where there is some kind of a instillation of the hope. Okay, and tell them that I usually keep telling that suicide is a permanent solution for a temporary problem. Okay.
Correct.
So nothing is permanent in this earth. So everything goes off. So it all takes some kind of a counseling skills, okay, which can be learned and which can be developed. Sometimes you can just, all you have to do is be active listener.
Thank you, Dr. Ravish. There's one question to Dr. Iyer. This is from Dr. Rangnath Kulkarni. How much medical information needs to be given to a police officer not below the rank of a PSI? Can it be denied? And if at all it is denied, for what reason can you give?
Yes, it can be denied. It can be denied.
So what reason should we give for denials?
The reason is, you can see, one is you are a doctor, you always have other patients to look, and you have a moral duty also there, how much to disclose, how much not to disclose. And someone, just a PSI coming and asking you to tell all the things, you need not tell. But if the court asks you to tell, you have to tell.
Right, ma'am. There's also one related question. If a suicidal patient's caregiver or patient himself insists for discharge against medical advice, as a psychiatrist, do I need to discharge against medical advice, inform the review board for intervention, or view the address of the patient with serious suicidal behavior?
Yeah,
They
you
want to
cannot
know
say
if
they
you
want to
discharge a
know.
patient against medical advice and the person was suicidal, you needed to actively intervene. So the doctor wants to know, should he discharge and inform the review board for further intervention on this issues
No,
to
no.
address this behavior?
First of all, the moment he is a psychiatric patient and he is having suicidal tendency, our job as a doctor is to give him a reasonable care and a reasonable supervision, right? And for reasonable supervision, what you have to do is, our bonded duty is to inform their family and to inform the person if he wants to go, even go. So you have to inform their family and then only you can send him off.
Mahesh, the MHCA is quite clear. You can admit under section 89, okay, if you are able to provide the required, okay, care. If you are unable to give the required care, then under section 94, there is a provision to transfer them, okay. You can't discharge them. Okay. Otherwise, you will be liable for abatement. Mahesh?
Hello?
Mahesh, you are off air.
Only Dr. Ravish and myself.
I'm very much here. I'm very much here. I'm listening. Okay. Yeah. This sort of scenario was, we regularly encountered in UK, where, it was a duty of the psychiatrist to assess if the person is at high risk of suicide. And if the person is at high risk of suicide, we can admit under Section 2 of Mental Health Act in UK, or rather England and Wales, I must say, because Scotland has got its own different one. And see, the psychiatrist could be questioned for not detaining this person and treating. And if for the Section 2 of Mental Health Act, family could, families, permission need not be taken. But for Section 3 of Mental Health Act, which is 6 months, this Section 2 is for 28 days. But for Section 3, which is treatment, mainly the treatment part, if you want to retain for under Section 3 of Mental Health Act, family's permission must be taken. And if the family doesn't give permission for us to treat, then you can continue. This continues. The person continues on Section 2 of Mental Health Act. So same thing. I think it's been like replicated here also. So I think it's a duty of the psychiatrist to see if at high risk of suicide. So a lot of training, of course, is needed. Of course, and, of course, availability of bed is an issue. Not every psychiatrist will have access to beds, so you don't know how you're going to inform the relevant authority. That's something Dr. Ravish can take up the next.
I mean, that's what I told. See, you can section him under 89. Even if he is under voluntary admission, you can section him into involuntary. Number one. Second thing is, if you are unable to give the proper care under Section 94, he can be transferred to a better care. But you can't discharge against medical advice. Otherwise, you will be liable. Okay. And as you rightly said, consent of the family members is not needed. Okay. If one more medical officer, see, one more psychiatrist invariably will be present in such institution. So that will give 72 hours of time, okay, before you can inform the mental health review board. And definitely, mental health review board will uphold if the patient is suicidal.
And what is recorded also matters. Absolutely. Like what we document matters. If we say he's at high risk of suicide, imminent risk of suicide, and then send him home under discharge against medical advice, that's not acceptable, right? So you have to rephrase or reword it appropriately. That's what matters.
See, after MHCA comes, there is nothing like discharge against medical advice. The terminology itself is obsolete. You have to forego that terminology.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Vijay. Actually, anchoring. I actually lost the connection and I was out of action.
I was scared.
So I'm logging in through the phone actually. Actually, if you look at today's program, I think we've had the best of the panelists today, Dr. Ravish and Dr. Priya Iyer here today. And we had more than 55 questions that came on this chat platform. We had more than 15 questions that had come to my personal mail. We tried to address a lot of issues. There's a lot of thoughts that had gone into this discussion. Dr. Ravish had so many issues to discuss. Dr. Iyer had so many issues to discuss. But I think all this was kept pending because the questions were so many and the audience were keen to listen to so many questions being answered here. So the priority was the question from the audience. So I shifted gears and went to the questions from the Q&A section. I think we've already reached the end of the program, and it is close to 2 hours since we began, and we don't know how these 2 hours really flew. And there were so many questions, a lot of discussion, a lot of controversy being addressed. And I would thank Dr. Ravish and Dr. Priya Iyer for actually anchoring this show and giving us the best of the inputs possible. I know it's a lot of academic inputs. For any other personal cases and related issues, they must consult the best possible legal consultant and medical consultant who works in medical legal issues for us to get a better clarity. It's not in general. So the disclaimer here is this for academic discussion and stimulating some sort of thought process to this sort of clinical scenarios. And each scenario could be different, and we must definitely take help of the experts. I would thank Dr. Prasad Rao, the chairperson for today's program, for his beginning inputs. And I know we went off and we could not have him in between for some technical reasons. I would thank my colleagues, Dr. Vijay Harbishatter and Dr. Jagdish, for making sure this program is ongoing and giving the required logical support all the time. I would thank Ganeshan from Microlabs for helping us with all the technical requirements for this program. For any final thoughts, Dr. Ravish, do you want to say anything? And
no, I would like to say one thing. I would request this panel, especially the two people who have contributed, I think, immensely to our knowledge, should be appreciated and recognized in a proper form of IAPP Karnataka State Branch whenever the occasion comes. And I think let us have a very healthy and prosperous relation in the long term. And Dr. Iyer would help us. Maybe she will be helping us academically, and also we will guide through IAPP national body that we'll keep her in the panel if she is willing after due process. And we can use her intellectual process and legal knowledge for our helping. Thank you very much, Mahesh. As always, you brought the best people, two best people. Thank you very much.
Dr. Ravish, for your final comments.
I think there is a lot of homework that needs to be done with one of our colleagues being put in such a slippery slope kind of a situation. We have a lot of work that has been unworked. Okay, so I think the presence of the eminent psychiatrist, Dr. Prasad Rao, will give us the strength to take this further forward. And as I have already worked with regard to media guidelines, I already have some primary preliminary work, and also working with farmer suicide, and now with regard to suicides among students. Probably we have enough data, and with a medical legal expert like Dr. Priyadarshini, we can utilize this forum and come up with one of the best possible models, like someone was asking, in order to make this society a better place. Thank you, Dr.
Prasad. Dr. Prasad, Dr. Ravish has given a blank check.
Yes,
about his involvement and commitment.
We'll cash it. We'll cash it. We'll thoroughly cash it. Thank you very much, Ma. You've done a great job.
Dr. Iyer, for your final comments.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Great job.
My pleasure being with you all, and I enjoy being always with my doctor friends.
And one last comment. I really
Anytime
loved the Balaji, Lord Srinivasa behind you, Amagita. No, I really loved the background, Lord.
is a very devoted and blessed madam. Is blessed and devoted. Is a what do you call?
Now we can see Lakshmi.
Lakshmi.
Now you can see Lakshmi. You can catch it.
Lakshmi, she hid from us. She's holding the Lakshmi.
In the
No, I was holding it.
And I must mention, there were 105 people in the participating. Actually, it is one of the highest in the last few weeks that we have done.
Vijay, I congratulate you, Vijay, for the tenaciousness, for the way you very politely put it, and all the things. Thank you very much.
Sure,
Dr. Prasad Rao is the blessed child for Lord
Thank you,
Venkateshwara.
sir. A pleasure.
Thank you. I was watching all through Lord Balaji's face.
Mahesh, we need to thank all the participants. Because of them, we are able to do the program.
Yes.
Vijay, I
Let
must thank you one more
the
box.
Lord
Vijay,
give
shall I
all
give you one more
blessings
box?
to God.
Yeah, please, sir. Please, sir.
No, this question and answers, if we have the recording, can be brought by a very simple book with giving real connotations to the two panelists and other questionnaires. This is, the answers which came out might be useful as a book. One book can be brought. One more thought which came as the presentation was going on.
We'll try, sir.
We have a recording. We'll ask.
We have the recording, sir.
We have the recording, no?
Mr. Ganeshan, you need to
We have the
promise us.
recording.
So Ganeshan is a very nice person. Ganeshan can be talked to, actually. Ganeshan, I will send you some sweets and all to you. Give the transcript to.
I will definitely send it, sir. The video recording will come in another half an hour. I will have it passed.
Yeah. Thank you so much. These are really good. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, one and all.
Thanks.
Thank you, delegates, for participating in this program to make it a successful program. Week after week, we have new programs and trying to get in a lot of
We
topics
look
for
forward.
discussion.
Yeah.
We are looking forward for your participation again. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, sir.
Good night. Good
My
night.
pleasure.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, sir.
Thanks, madam. Thanks. Thank you very much. Thanks, Ravi, sir. Thanks. Thanks, Mr. Ganeshan.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, everybody.
ಹೆಂಗ ಎಂಡ್ ಮಾಡೋದು
ನಾನು ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ ಮೇಡಮ್?